So happy to be back introducing you to some of Alberta's brightest and inspirational business leaders. Throughout the CEO series, we're going to introduce you to individuals who are at the top of their game. And that's why it seems appropriate to begin things with a Calgarian who made his mark playing a game, football. A lot of kids dream of being paid to play a sport they love. Few actually see that dream come true. And then when the final game is played, some are left to wonder what the next step will be. The journey from the field to his next adventure was a natural for my guest this hour. Given his love of family and food, it's not surprising a successful restaurant was in the cards. I am pleased to welcome one of the co-founders of Spolombo's Fine Foods and Deli, Tony Spoletini, to the CEOs. Hello, Tony.
Oh, hi. I'm very flattered to be called a CEO.
Okay, you are a co-founder. There's
Yes.
two other very important people behind Spolombo's.
Yes.
We're going to find out more about them as well.
Totally.
But the way the game here is played,
Yes.
I know you've played enough football, but the way the game here is played is kind of like to find out a little bit about Tony growing up, the guy he is. And I'm really looking forward to this hour. If you have had the opportunity, first of all, maybe meet Tony Spoletini. Secondly, maybe attend an event where Tony Spoletini has been an MC. You basically just sit back and you're entertained. So I know I don't get to just sit back and be entertained, but I'm looking forward to this, Tony. So thanks so much for coming by.
Flattered that you guys invited me, and I can't wait.
All right, here we go. We start off with, where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Calgary, native Calgarian, born at the General Hospital, October 14th, 1965. Like most Italians back then, we lived in Bridgeland. And then there was the mass exodus to the burbs, unfortunately. And little did we know that, Bridgeland would be one of the hot spots now, and we should have kept that old house on Fifth Avenue, but had a great childhood in Bridgeland, and then we moved out to Dalhousie out in the northwest.
Whoa, Dalhousie, that's so far away, wasn't it?
That's inner city now. It's crazy.
What kind of a kid were you?
I was a happy child, but a very mischievous kind of a troublemaker. Like not an evil child, but the kind that would tease his cousins and just turn the house upside down. So I got spanked a lot.
Cousins, you had a lot of them, I know, but from just your immediate family, tell me a little bit about your siblings, where you found yourself in the order of the Spoletini family.
I'm the oldest, and my parents were married very young. I mean, back then, my mom, she had me shortly after, about 6 months after she turned 18. They got extremely young. My dad was like 21 years old, so I'm the oldest of very young couple. So my parents aren't that old, which is a blessing because they're still very active in our lives and very healthy. And then I had another younger brother that would be a couple years younger than me, but we lost him when we were little. And then a younger sister, she's 7 years younger. Her name is Ida. And a younger brother who's an opera singer in New York, who's actually going to turn 40 next week, Giuseppe. My parents are down. I actually took him to the airport this morning. They're going out to see Joe.
You sound pretty proud. I'm sure you're proud of your brother and proud of all your siblings.
Totally. My sister's just a very bright girl. She was a brains in the family. And on Saturday, she does cannolis and cream puffs, so you can get the authentic Italian pastries down at Splombo. She's just an incredible baker.
All right. So you were a mischievous child.
Yes.
So did most of your youth, were you growing up in Dalhousie, or was more of that in Bridgeland?
Actually, more in Dalhousie. I mean, I was in Bridgeland till I was about almost 6, and then we moved up. So I spent the better part of my youth in Dalhousie. And what's kind of neat is we moved to Delhart Road, so the whole block was like an Italian block. To the left was Compare Umberto, everybody's Compare. My parents baptized his son. And then next door was my Aunt Anna, which was Tom, my cousin Tom, who's my partner, his mom and dad, my Aunt Anna, my Uncle Ernie. And then 2 doors down from them was my mom's brother, Uncle Frank. And so we basically had this Italian block in Dalhousie. We created our own little Bridgeland in the Northwest.
So what did that mean then from 6 on, growing up as a kid? And I want to eventually get into why football is such a prominent part of your life.
Well, what was phenomenal, Angela, is with my Aunt Anna and my Uncle Ernie, they were like another set of parents. And Tom and I, even though we're cousins, we grew up like brothers. So we would have dinner never alone. It'd be one night at my mom's and one night at my aunt's. So we just had this beautiful extended family. And I also had my grandparents live with us because it was tradition for the oldest. My father was the oldest to take in his parents. And for a few years, I even had my great-grandpa live with us. So to have 4 generations living in one home was just unbelievable. And so that I feel very blessed for that.
So that was the family in your home. But
Yes.
on the block then, it sounds like it was overrun by cousins and all your family.
Well, what's kind of neat was the neighbors across the street had this big balcony, so everybody would congregate in the summer, and you'd have wine. You know, back then it was okay to drink in front of your house, and you know, you'd have the prosciutto and the stuff, right? And so Italians speak very loud, so the neighbors would always sit there and watch us. And I found it weird that they would always watch my parents. And then afterwards, Bob, the neighbor, came over. He goes, you know, the way you guys talk loud in that, we thought you guys were always fighting, so we're waiting for you guys to get at each other's throats, and it never happened. It never happened.
That was just you being family
Just
and
being
loving
family,
and everything
talking.
else.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's get into activities then. Did you find yourself, funny, this week we were talking about kids have too much organized play, but did you have a lot of free time, a lot of free play?
It was incredible. I feel sorry for kids today because at that time, the city limits was basically 53rd Street, and we lived 2 blocks from 53rd. And Edgemont was a bunch of pasture, and there was cows, and so Calgary was maybe 450, 500,000 people. Not that Calgary's not safe now, but extremely safe back then. My mom never had to worry. You could go out, and you know, as long when the sun came down, she'd yell. So we'd be out there running around in those pastures, riding our bikes till all hours, playing football on the field, and then coming home without a worry of anything happening. It was a lot smaller then. Everyone knew everyone. I mean, someone in the community always had their eyes out for you. So I think kids are more organized now because I think we're just more paranoid now, Angela. The city's so much bigger now, and it's a safe city, but not quite the same as it was, 35, 40 years ago.
Now tell me how football got into your life, really into your blood.
Looked up to the Furzanis. I mean, growing up in Bridgeland, the Furzanis were a mainstay in Bridgeland. So at a very young age, they were heroes of ours, John, the late John, Tom, and Joe. And so, watching those 3 brothers, play football, Tom and I and every Italian boy in Bridgeland and Renfrew wanted to emulate the Furzanis, and we were, I was nowhere near as good as any of them, but we kind of followed in some close footsteps. Like we got to play professional football, play for the Stampeders, and then become our own entrepreneurs, much like they did. So they were like mentors, not only in football but also in the transition of life after football.
Football, though, for organized, would it have been in high school? Was that St. Francis?
Actually, yes. But what happened back then is there was Bantam football back then, Angela, that was started in 1960, and you played Bantam was like 13 to 15, but I only played 1 year of Bantam, which was 15. And then I went to high school. But what's funny, back then there was a weight restriction of 160 pounds. So I used to have to run with a garbage bag every Saturday morning to make weight, and then get weighed in, weigh 159 3/4, strip down to my underwear, and then pound about 6 chocolate bars and play the game. And my poor cousin Tom and my partner Mike Palumbo, they couldn't play football because those guys in grade 9 were like 220 pounds, right? So it was it was a safety thing, I think, back then. But now Bantam's changed where you can be heavy on the line even if you're 15, but you just can't play like any of the skill positions. So but back then there was that weight restriction, and so I have to put on a glad bag and just make weight every set down at Old Mawada Stadium, and then from there on, the next year later in grade 10 to grade 12, I went to St. Francis.
All right, hold that thought. Tony Spoletini is my guest, and we are finding out all about his journey to eventually being part of one of the 3 owners of Splombo's. Back with Tony after this. Tony Spoletini joins us on The CEO, is one of the founders of Splombo's Fine Foods and Deli. And before the break, we were finding out, well, actually, I had a lovely vision of Tony running around in a glad bag so that he could make sure he dropped a bit of pounds, was 159, was able to play Bantam football. You didn't have those weight restrictions when you hit St. Francis, though, did you?
No, if you did that at St. Francis, we'd have no team. I think 1 year our offensive line outweighed the Stampeders.
All right, so then you have high school there, and maybe back up a bit here, because I always want to know, especially in those young formative years, if there was someone who really made an impression on you. And it could have been a relative. A lot of times people say my mom or my dad, but was there someone there that you talked about the Forzanis, but that you really admired for maybe their leadership qualities?
Well, I mean, not to sound like I'm brown-nosing, but my cousin Tom was a couple years older. So when I was in grade 9, he was already playing at St. Francis. And so at St. Francis, the tradition was you only got a jacket if you won the city championship. And they had started since Tom Frisani back in 1971, winning a whole string of city championships. And so Tommy had won in grade 11. And so, you know, as a young child playing football and bound to go to St. Francis, you wanted that leather jacket, right? And so watching him play and the former players before that, you know, that had gone on before us even, were kind of like the bar that you needed to set. So that was exciting, was you wanted that jacket.
And you admired him then for his playing ability, obviously.
But also his leadership. And I mean, we'll get into that in the second part when we'll have more time, but we all have our roles like a team at Splombo's. You know, Mike's got his role, I've got mine, and Tommy's got his. And Tom's a very good leader. He's a very good business mind. You know, I'm the kind of flirty spouse that spends all the money. So
okay, we definitely are going to get in that, but I still have to find out about your journey, because from St. Francis, you were a successful UFC dyno.
Yes, Coach Peter Cannellan, who was a very important man in my life and another mentor. I'd be remiss to mention Coach Gary DeMann at St. Francis, a very special man also. I played for some incredible people, but Peter, recruited me out of high school, gave me an opportunity to play right away for the Dinos, and I was fortunate enough to win a Vanier with my cousin Tom in 1983. And Grant covered us, and it was just a great journey. So to be able to be part of another hometown like the University of Calgary, basically 70% of our team were Calgary kids, like guys that I used to despise from Crescent Heights and EP Scarlett and Winston Churchill. We're all now my buddies, and then together, we go out and represent our city very well. And so that was a great ride.
Was that 4 years or 5 years? Did you go 4 years with the Dinos?
I went 4 years with the Dinos, and then I got drafted by the Eskimos. So I'd be remiss, and I know my kids, I'm ashamed. I didn't finish my degree. I went and started playing pro, and then from pro we started Spolombos.
You never finished your degree.
I didn't finish them, about a half a year short.
Is that a regret, or is that something that you think?
No, it's a regret. It's a regret. I just didn't have the. As much as I think I was disciplined in my training and that, I tried to go back one off season to finish, but I just couldn't. I think I found out now that I was probably ADHD, and I just couldn't put myself to go through classes anymore. And I'm short, between a half year and a year, and I regret that. That's one thing in my life that I started and never finished.
You might get an honorary doctorate or something like that from the USC down the road. Yeah. I want to look back, though, on those years with the Dinos because, and I'm not going to be able to name them all, but there are some fairly successful players who came out of that. Well, Tony Spoletini. I'm thinking of Greg Vavra. There was one who was down in Texas. He's a successful businessman.
Dougie Nyoff.
That's it, Nyoff. And not even so much successful as business people, but there's so many within those years that really give back to the community. Well, is that Pete Cannellan? I mean, I'm just wondering.
It is. Pete taught us about community, and so when you're able to amalgamate rivals, for example, like to play a violent sport like football, you really have to. At least for the game, you have to kind of build up a little disdain for the team that you're playing against. And then once you're off the field, it's different. So to be able to amalgamate rivals like, Francis and then get those guys afterwards to buy in now that they're all teammates, it kind of shows you that, we're all good people. You know what I mean? At the moment, let's be competitive. It's like in business, we want to do our best, but at the end of the day, we're all good people, and we're all striving for the same goals. We all want to do well. We all want to support our families. And so, Peter was very important about that. He made us carry ourselves well in public. We always had to wear, when we were traveling, a red sweater and a tie. You had to be proud. You had to represent well. And, you carry a bit of that. Didn't mean we didn't have fun, but you learn to respect other people.
And that's very important. So you don't finish your degree because you have the opportunity to play professional football.
Exactly.
But you have the opportunity to play professional football with the Edmonton Eskimos.
Oh my God, I cried. You should be happy that you get drafted because not everyone gets drafted.
Exactly.
And I was their second last pick, so I almost didn't get that opportunity. And so, but. When I was crying, and I remember talking to Frankie Morris, and he's like, he thought I was overwhelmed with joy. I was just upset because I had to go up north, right? And what blew my mind was that I had this disdain for Edmonton and never been there, right? Just hated the Eskimos, right? I get there, and it ends up being one of the most cool cities that you'll ever, like the ethnic communities there, the culture there is just phenomenal. At that time in '87 when I got drafted, the restaurants and believe me, the bars were 10 times better than here. Like there was Berry Teas, which was the preempt to Cowboys, you know, the Italian center in Little Italy, where we actually got our idea for our sandwiches from Mr. Spinelli at the Italian center. We can talk into that.
That's right.
But you know, Giovanni Caboto Park, the spaghetti eating contests with the Eskimo. So there was a very strong Italian culture up there. There was just a lot of great community up in Edmonton.
So what a life lesson that was, really. I mean, how many times we walk around with biases that really have no basis?
You can see why in life when you deal with sexism and racism and that, how a lot of that is just sometimes unintentionally based just on perception. And then when you actually go to some place or meet someone, you kind of go, wow, geez, I just never gave this place a fair shake. And you know, you've got to actually go and live there and experience it to really judge a place.
You're right, with anything. You know, there's that ignorance until you understand what that other individual or that community is experiencing, then you really appreciate it. It was a couple of years with the Eskimos?
Yes, it was, yeah.
And then you did get to play with the Stamps.
I became a free agent and I had an opportunity to come home. And you know, I believe me, the Eskimos, they're very dear to my heart, except when they play Calgary. Like if Edmonton's playing anybody but Calgary, I'm an alumni there too. I cheer for them. But you know, obviously when they play Calgary, I'm a Stampeder. But they did give me my chance. But when I had an opportunity to come home, you know what, I got to play my university ball here, so be able to play professional in front of my family, and then to be able to come back and play with at that time Mike Palumbo was one of my close friends, and my cousin Tom, to be able to come back and play with them, and Tim Petros, who I had played with in college, Darcy Kopp, who I'd played with in college, Kent Warnock, who I'd played with in college. Like there was a real strong dino connection to the Stampeders, Angela, so it was a real treat to be able to play with those guys again back home.
Did your family have their own cheering section?
Oh man, we had tons of tickets. I think the only reason why I made the team was because I used to bring everybody home. My mom to this day still misses feeding the guys. You know, like she was so cool. We'd planned to go out, so you know, here I am. The guys used to tease me because here I am, a professional football player who still lived at home, right? So why would I move out? You know what I mean? I got food, I got my laundry done, and no one you know, ragging me, right? So moms were the best, right? I could do no wrong. So we'd all come home, and like most Italians, you lived in the basement, right? You had a full kitchen in the basement. The upstairs was just like a museum. You know, it's true, plastic on everything, right? If you walk on the carpet, the securities go off like the Pink Panther, right? So
that anyway, was the museum part.
That was the museum. So you come home, and you know what? My mom would start, you know, we'd start drinking and we'd eat, and you start hanging out and having fun, and next thing you know, more booze. Well, we'd pass out. By the time we'd wake up, it'd be like 3-4 in the morning. It'd be too late to go to the bar. And then years later, my mom said that was her plan because she never wanted us to go downtown and get in trouble, so she'd get us drunk at her house. So,
or heaven forbid, meet a woman.
Yeah, exactly.
I know sometimes Italian mothers are very particular about who you marry. All right. You know what? We've got about a minute here, and I feel bad for even starting this next journey because answer me this, though. The last game you play with the Stampeders, did you have a clear idea of what your next step was going to be?
No, I thought I was going to keep. I thought I was going to keep playing. The last game I ever played was the 1991 Grey Cup that we lost to the Argos. You know, the Rocket ran that one back, and the beer missed his head, and yeah, that was my last game. And so at that point, I thought, you know what, I might give this, you know, another shot. And then my wife and I were engaged. And we got married. I went on my honeymoon, and then on my honeymoon, I just said, you know what? I think I've had my run here. I think it's time to move on. So when I came back, I told Wally that I was going to retire, and Wally had one of his classic lines. He goes, "Normally I do the surprising, but today you surprised me."
And so, you know what? That's a great place to stop before our break here, because I want to find out after that then what did Tony Spoletini do. You're listening to The CEOs. I'm Angela Kokott. We're back after this. Well, I'm enjoying my conversation with Tony Spoletini. Not sure if you are, but I knew this is what it was going to be like, because Tony Spoletini, if you've ever known him, heard him host an event, dropped by Splombo's for their great sandwiches, you know, suddenly you feel like you're his best friend. And Tony, credit to you, a number of texts we're receiving here. Love this one. I think it's from Vince. Played football at Fowler this era. Best time of my life. Thanks for doing this. I had to try to tackle Palumbo.
Well, see, Mike Mike was an offensive lineman, but back in high school, Angela, he was a big fullback. And so he ran over a few people. Mikey was a stud even till now, but especially back then, he was incredible.
And one more here before we get back to the conversation. My first job was at the old National Market in Inglewood. I would always run over the fresh veggies to their back door at the old Splombos. Never forget the genuine great people they are. Help define who I am today. And that's from Chris. So
that's nice. Thank
that
you.
speaks a lot to your character and obviously Mike and Tom's character as well. So Tony, you talk to Wally and Wally says, wait a second, I'm supposed to surprise you. It's not supposed to be the other way around. But you just came to that decision that it's time to change.
I think what happens, Angela, in sport is sometimes you can hang on too long. And at that time, the CFL was turning the corner and it was starting to get better. And I mean, the money was decent. You had an opportunity, like you said, to get paid for a sport that you loved. Like, you didn't get rich off of it, but believe me, it opened a lot of doors. Look what it did for us now. And a lot of my ex-teammates, as you mentioned, are successful businessmen and you name it, right? So, but you reach a point that, you know you're not going any further. I knew, like, I wasn't a superstar. I was like an average pro. I was a soldier. I'd go out there, work hard, do my thing. And, after 5 years of that, you kind of go, you know what, I've kind of hit my pinnacle. And I was still young. And it was just time to do other things. And Tom and Mike had finished a year before. And so they were helping Tom's father-in-law renovate a new restaurant in Bridgeland. And we're thinking of ideas. And the two of them came up with, hey, let's market a authentic Italian sausage and sell it food service. And so they'd mentioned it to me before I'd gone on my honeymoon, and we kind of started producing it in the basement of Tom's father-in-law's restaurant before I left. And then those guys kept perfecting it while I was gone. And when I came back, they had this wicked recipe. The bulk of it they got from Tom's mother-in-law, and the rest came from our family influences. And then I just said, hey, you know what, let's just do this. And I mean, they had already started and were kind enough, Tom and Mike, to let me in. And then we just started, they gave me a Tupperware with fresh sausages, and we started flogging it to different restaurants and stuff.
And that's how it began, though.
That's how it began.
You didn't have your own little deli. This was just trying to get your sausage.
Exactly. And so we would go into Tom's mother-in-law's and father-in-law's restaurant at like 2 a.m. before they opened up, go to the basement with a little 30-pound hand crank. We'd mix it by hand, like we'd debone it, grind it, mix it by hand, stuff maybe 15, 20 pounds, and just try and sell that to local restaurants and stuff like that. And it took a long grind. And so what happened was...
Grind.
Yeah, exactly. No pun intended. So there was this little deli in Inglewood, the 9th Avenue Deli. An old friend of ours, Al Lang, said to us, look, my cousin's trying to sell this little deli in Inglewood. It's got some incredible sausage equipment in the back and a little deli in the front. Now, this sausage equipment was from 1960, but it was cast iron and it hydraulic, and it actually pumped about 100 pounds worth. So for us, that was like going from a tricycle to a Ferrari. But this old machine, if you went to like Schneider's or something, they'd laugh you out. But for us, we're like, oh my God, are we like expanding? We got this 100-pound stuffer now, right? And so my job was to put the casing on the hose and then fire it out onto the table. And then we'd all tie it up, and then we'd package it. Tom would go deliver it, and Mike and I would clean up. And we kind of kept the front end for extra cash flow. It was a little deli. We figured, we might as well keep the front end because we didn't have a lot of wholesale business. And so we started incorporating our own sandwiches and kept some of the favorites that were there. And believe it or not, the deli initially grew faster than the sausage. And so we reached a point after about 5-6 years where, like, the location where we are now was an old Dino Gas. And Petro-Canada owned that site, and it was an old little grocery store that this nice Korean man ran. And it's famous because the building next door has Yogi Bear on it, right? And that's been there since the 1950s. And but a little funny story. So when we first moved in there, Inglewood was just getting cleaned up, was a little rough. And so we weren't the only people soliciting early in the morning. So especially after Stampede, it was a little crazy back there behind the barns. And another funny was we had this vet clinic right next door, and every now and then the van would come and pick up the animals that had passed away. And one time I yelled at Mike, the meat's here, and some customer saw us, oh my God. And so he kind of... You see these dead cats and stuff going into this van. I go, Mikey, the meat's here. Oh, it didn't go over too well.
All kidding aside.
All kidding aside. That's right. All kidding. I don't want PETA after me now. So, so you know what? The people in Inglewood, and I'm sure you know the story, fought hard to clean up that area, and we were just blessed to get there just as this was turning the corner, and then to be able to get this corner lot where we are now just as that area is taking off. Really, the timing couldn't have been better, and that really exploded for us.
You had just such forethought. That's what it was.
I'd like to think so, but a little luck comes in handy sometimes.
Back to the days of Bridgeland. Should have stayed in Bridgeland. Didn't know it was going to be so successful. Yes. Tony, hold on here. We have to take another break here. Tony Spoletini is my guest on the CEOs. I'm Angela Kokott. We're back after this. And sometimes during our CEO series, which we will have every Thursday at 2 o'clock for the next 7 weeks, sometimes we will have truly a CEO. Sometimes we will have a business leader. And Tony Spoletini, I think you have to share the credit, obviously, with Mike and Tom, your partners.
No question. I mean, each one of us is like a rock band, right? How many times when a rock band splits, the solo careers are never as good? I mean, we're only as good as a team. And it goes to show you how humble Tom and Mike are, where they allow me to come and represent us here today. Those guys work their butts off behind the scenes and just are happy. You know, Mikey runs the plant. He's the mad scientist back there coming up with all the different recipes. You know, you talked about the original recipe, right? Well, now there's about 16 to 18 different types. We've gone into chicken and turkey, and that's Mike, right? Looking after all that stuff.
The one with apple's really good,
yeah,
too.
The chicken apple.
Apple.
So Mikey, to this day, is still there like at the crack of dawn. I'm a little lazier now. I don't come in as early, but Mikey's still one of the first guy there, you know. Tommy's kind of like the man that deals with all the corporate stuff. Like, he's out there dealing with the co-ops. He's the visionary, thinking of the future, and those two guys are my, like my big brothers, right? And so they let me be the front guy. They let me be the clown. They let me, come here and have fun with you, Angela. They let me, out in public, to do events.
They let you out in public.
They let their little, and then they reach a point where like, okay, now you got to calm it down. Okay, now you're embarrassing. I think it was one time I was on another radio station, and I used to have a character on that station, and we used to have some fun, and I kind of crossed the line, because on that station we could cross the line sometimes. And so the lady, Tom's at the bank depositing money, and she goes, I heard you this morning, Mr. Spoletini, and you're a pig. And Tom goes, well, no, that was my cousin Tony. No, it was definitely Tom, they said. And so he comes back, he goes, you got to watch it, okay? Because now I'm getting in trouble for it.
Well, and I guess it's probably not a stretch to figure out how the name Splombos came about.
Well, it was our lawyer, Greg Peterson, who's actually one of your co-workers. He does the football with Mark. Greg Peterson was a all-Canadian safety, but then got into law. And, when we were thinking of a name, Greg, said, guys, why don't you just put Spoletini and Palombo together and call it Splombos? And I said, hey, you know what? That's good. It sounds like a sausage. So, it's stuck, and it's been a really catchy name for us. So thank you, Greg.
Do you think there really was a master plan, or it sounds like things just sort of happened that, first of all, you're making it wholesale, then suddenly you get this little operation that has a deli in the front, and, was there a master plan?
You know what, Angela? I don't think there was. I think, all of us are kids from immigrant parents that came over here for a better life, and the work ethic. Mike's parents, Tom's parents, my parents, most people, they worked their butts off, and so they never complained. They probably didn't do what they wanted to do in life, but they just did what they had an opportunity to, and made the best of it, and made a great life for us. And so we'd always look up to them. And whenever you wanted to complain or quit or something, you said, well, look, our parents never bailed on us, always provided everything for us. We never lacked anything. So I think we went into it just saying, hey, what have we got to lose? If this doesn't work, we can go get a job. We all worked construction. It was just, that market was saturated, right? We had uncles that sold cement, placed cement, buried in cement, and there just wasn't any more room for us. So the only other thing that we knew was how to eat. And so we got into food. And I think sometimes, some people, like you said, they have a plan. They say, okay, I'm going to follow this model. This is how a deli should be. I think with us, we just went off the cuff, and we set realistic goals. We said, for the first year, we want to survive. Year 2, let's try and break even. Year 3, maybe we can start making a little bit of money back. And I think when you just set attainable goals, because I think most people probably would have given up after 3 years, because we were digging into our savings. A lot of people have great ideas, Angela, but they just sometimes maybe don't have the patience, or maybe they run out of funds to live out that dream. I think we were fortunate enough to have the funds to carry us until we finally started turning the corner without having to, sell out sometimes to outside investors and stuff.
Well, I think I know the answer to this question, but Tony Spoletini, you are a huge community supporter. Booster Club, Sportsman of the Year, what was that, 2007, the Sportsman of the Year for the Calgary Booster Club?
I think it was 13.
Oh, 13, right, sorry. I'm not.
That's okay.
You're much younger than I think. But, so you have been recognized for what you have done for this community, for the football community. Why is that so important?
Calgary's always been that city. Like when Tom, Mike, and I were kids, there was always somebody's, father that stepped up, or mother, company, what have you, that was always there to buy you the uniforms and provide you the wind-up banquet, or pay for the kids that didn't have the money in the league. And that's always kind of been the mantra here in Calgary. And so when you grow up and you have an opportunity to be successful, you almost feel like you've got to pass that on. It's kind of an unofficial duty, is hey, if we can make it, we got to keep this going. And so all kids sports are dear to us. All kids in general are dear to us. Obviously, football's our primary focus, but you know what? We have a budget, or we have a heart for any of kids charities or any kids sports, and it's because of the influence it made on our lives. We want to make sure that we're able to pass those opportunities on to the future.
All right, hold that thought, because I want to find out more about the Greater Calgary Amateur Football Association, as well as the Italian Sportsman Dinner. Have you ever been to one of those events? Well, you're listening to the guy who is probably one of the key players behind the success of that. Tony Spoletini is my guest on the CEOs. We're back after this. Wait a second, where did this hour go? We've got about 6 minutes left, and I've got a lot more questions for my guest, Tony Spoletini of Spolombo's Fine Foods and Deli. I want to find out more about the Greater Calgary Amateur Football Association and the great things you have done in Northeast Calgary with Shouldice Field.
Well, the Greater Calgary was actually a nice gentleman, Dave Hardy, who's with Cops for Kids. He had this idea of redoing a field at Shouldice and making it artificial because of our climate and that. And with the new technology, the new field turf, Angela, it's brilliant. It's not like that old AstroTurf that we used to play on, which was like the carpet in your rec room and you'd plant and blow your knee out. This stuff is like real grass. It's very good as far as injuries. Mm-hmm. If you brush it in the wintertime, it never gets hard. So that was the goal. And so we started with the idea for one, and then we figured, well, why don't we just do three? Because they're all close together. And so with Greg Peterson and Coach Don Dom and Ron Logan and Jim Crochet and a whole host of the football community, we formed an association because football hadn't really been united. There was Bantam, there was Pee Wee, there was Adam, there was Flag High School. So we decided to bring all the football entities together, make one entity, and that way you have a bigger voice when you're going to city council or the province. And so what we did is we went to the city, went to the province. We had some great sponsorship in Canada. Ted Heller, the Stampeders were all field sponsors for big money, and then a lot of scoreboard sponsors and what have you in the province, and the city chipped in with some big money. The feds chipped in some big money, and we were able to build these three beautiful artificial turf fields where our kids are thriving on today.
But you still have big plans for that area.
Yeah, we need to really clean it up. So we have enough money now from the city to get the plaza done, clean it up, because it's kind of dusty and dirty there. So there'll be a beautiful plaza and sidewalks and what have you. But we still are a little bit short to get the locker rooms, more locker rooms that are needed there. So we're out there fundraising for that last little bit to get those locker rooms done.
And have you got a big dinner coming up?
Yes, I believe it's March 6th, and I think you just, if you go on the Greater Calgary website, there's information on it. And so, yeah, we're trying to bring awareness. I mean, obviously that dinner isn't going to raise enough money for us to finish it, but hopefully it'll bring enough key people in there to see what we're trying to do. And maybe there's a bank or somebody that wants to put their name on that wants to put their name on that plaza, because the name of, you can call it XYZ Plaza, what have you. And we're hoping that we can, Greg and I can land a big sponsor and finish that project once and for all.
And I know Sports Talk is going to be broadcasting live from that dinner, so they want to be able to help you out as well. Now, the other thing, though, is we've got the Greater Calgary Amateur Football Association. Yep. We've also got the Italian Sportsman's Dinner. And, I mean, this is an annual event so many people look forward to. This year, do you have Mario Andretti coming?
Yes, we have Mario Andretti on June 4th.
Italian Mario
Andretti, man. He's the sexiest 70-year-old man alive. This guy is, like, cool.
But haven't you been, I mean, I know you won't take all the credit, but you guys have been bringing in some great guests. You've been putting on a great dinner every June. So, you know, tell me a little bit about that and why that's important to the community.
The dinner started, Angela, back in 1962. A gentleman, one of the only surviving original dinner committee, Alberto Romano, who's just a huge pillar in the Italian community. He started this dinner back in '62, and it's an all gentlemen's dinner, and it was to bring awareness to Italian culture, but to celebrate youth, sport, and academics, and it went to male athletes of Italian heritage. Mm-hmm. So initially, you know, back in 1962, if you could speak English, you won the scholarship, right? If you could even maybe write your name, right? And over time, we've kind of evolved the Italian. So actually, believe it or not, Angela, one of the original winners one of the first winners was Joe Ferzani back in 1962. When we had the 50th anniversary 2 years ago, there was a beautiful picture in the Herald of Joe and the other two winners. 17 years old, Joe Ferzani from St. Mary's was one of the first original, and then Tommy ended up winning it. John. I mean, if you look at the list of winners, there's about 12 guys that probably played in the CFL in there, businessmen. So, but what's nice is that it's evolved. So it's 800 men. And there's a sports women's dinner too, because unlike Augusta, we don't like to bring pressure on ourselves. So we helped create a women's dinner so everyone get off our back, right? Good. And plus, women need to get scholarships too. So the young ladies get a chance for equal amount of money, and the women's committee is phenomenal. So we have this gentleman's dinner, and what's nice about it, Angela, is that when it's an all male dinner, you can kind of get these guys to relax, and you know, the language can go a little bit awry. The content can be like locker room. And a lot of these American athletes that come up, they go, wow, because, you know, media in the States is not like here. You know, here you can get away. No one's really out trying to out somebody, so to speak. So that night, these guys tell you stuff that they normally wouldn't say in American media. And so guys are leaving there going, you know what, you know, Joe so-and-so did that in the locker room and that, because they know that we've got a reputation for not leaking that kind of information into social media. You know what? They get to tell things. You've told me so many things this hour. I don't know where it went. Tony, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. My pleasure, Angela. I'm honored, and I had a lot of fun. Thank you. Get back. You got a bunch of sausages to make. We've got news coming up next.